Okay, so I had a little bit of a problem with my previous file, which lost one of the graphs, but we'll continue on here with graph D, which is an absolute value function, and we'll take a look at these characteristics. Okay, so take a look at these, and remember, please continue pausing the video and working out the characteristics yourself first, and then come back and check to make sure that you have the same results or the correct results. Okay, so for graph D, the absolute value function, f of x is the absolute value of x. The domain and range, so we can see the domain is x is an element of all real numbers. The range, y is an element of all real numbers such that y is greater than or equal to 0. Zeros and intercepts, well, it looks like there's one 0, x equals 0, and the y-intercept, y equals 0. For intervals of increase and decrease, well, the interval of increase, take a look at that please. And x is an element where 0, well, between 0 and infinity, and the interval of decrease, x belongs to the range from negative infinity to 0. Discontinuities and asymptotes. We take a look at that. Apparently there are no asymptotes, and it doesn't look like the graph is broken anywhere, so there are none. Symmetry of the function, even or odd. Well, if you were to rotate this or reflect this in the y-axis, it would look as though the original would, or this function, the reflector function, would land back on the original again, so it is even symmetry. And if we were to check that, if we substitute in negative x in for x, we end up getting the values of x again. Therefore, it is even. All the values would end up being positive. And for the end behavior, as x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity, and as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches positive infinity. Okay, so we'll then transfer this information onto your table here, and we know that, again, this is the absolute value function. I remembered my ruler, thank you. That's roughly what it looks like. And then we just have to transfer the information to keep it all in one place. So the domain, x is an element of all real numbers. The range, y is an element of all real numbers such that y is greater than or equal to 0. Intervals of increase, decrease, location of discontinuities and asymptotes, well, there are none. Zeros, x equals 0, y-intercepts, y equals 0. Symmetry, even. And then behavior as x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity, and as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches infinity. Moving along to the square root function now. Okay, write out the domain and range, please. So the domain is x an element of all real numbers such that x is greater than or equal to 0. The range, y is an element of all real numbers such that y is greater than or equal to 0. 0, x equals 0, y-intercept, y equals 0, interval of increase, x is an element of 0 to infinity, interval of decrease, okay, there is none. Now moving along a little bit quicker here, please make sure that you pause each time to fill in the sheet before I do. Discontinuities and asymptotes. Well, there are no discontinuities. And technically speaking, there are no asymptotes. However, as you'll find later in, perhaps in calculus, there actually is a vertical asymptote right there at x equals 0. That won't be necessarily important at the moment, but we could say that there is a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. However, we probably won't really focus on that as much, so we could even say that in this function itself, besides right at that endpoint, in this function there are no asymptotes either. So I'll probably just be less sticky about it and just say there are no discontinuities and no asymptotes. If you want to be really technical, you could say that there is a vertical asymptote at that endpoint, but that's kind of nitpicky at this point. Part 5, symmetry. Well, if you were to reflect this in the y-axis, it would not lie back on itself, and then if you were to reflect it again in the x-axis, it would not lie on itself either, so it is neither even nor odd. And in part 6, which is the end behavior, as you take a look at this, as x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity. And that's all there is in that case. So we just move along here to the square root function, just do a quick sketch here, and then transfer all the information. Please make sure that you're pausing the video from time to time to make sure that you are doing this yourself. Okay, so no intervals of decrease, no discontinuities or asymptotes, zeros, x equals 0, y-intercept, y equals 0, neither for symmetry, and then behaviors as x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity. Okay,